Next one, Cool Human says, hey, SM, starting to gradually grow my agency, but running into some issues and would appreciate advice. I currently have 3 VA freelancers offshore who help me with some of my services, and the rest I am doing myself, and or have a white label companies to work with. I'm now trying to scale things up and build out a proper team, but it is hard with time zone differences to execute changes quickly. So thinking of hiring another VA in my country so the work can be split between them and I don't have downtime. How do you go about tracking hours or payments, et cetera, to make sure things don't go out of control? Up until now, I've been working on a project model and quote out projects and then pay my team a fixed price for all the work done that we agree on. However, I feel this won't be sustainable or attractive going forward with ongoing tweaks, fixes, and maintenance. Okay, so that's a really good question. That's more of a operations question, right? And that's, I'm pretty good at that myself. And so, all of our teams all of our team members are in other countries. I don't have anybody that works for me that in the United States. So we've got people in South Africa, India, and the Philippines. Those are where all three of my kind of team members are. And so, first of all, I don't pay on an hourly basis. I pay on a per task basis. There's a lot of reasons why I do that. Number one, I used to pay salaries. We used to pay salaries, and we're on the hook whether they're our workers. When you pay salary, you're on the hook whether your workers are productive or not. You pay, you just flat out pay. And so there were times where I didn't have work and we were just paying out of pocket. And so that I learned over time not to do that anymore. I don't like to pay hourly because there's no incentive for the hourly workers to become more efficient. I like to pay on a per task basis because it gives everybody incentive to be more productive, more efficient. It also gives our workers the ability to make a hell of a lot more money than they could if they were working hourly or even on salary, right? If you ask my team, I've had I'm not kidding. I have testimonials from my workers that about how significantly their lives have changed because of the way that I pay them. And it gives it, one in particular, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's was disabled. So he had some sort of an injury and was disabled. He's one of our writers now for Semantic Links. He's one of the guys that writes content for link building. Anyway, he was disabled and he had a few, a couple of small children, young children, and a family, and he's on disability in the Philippines. And so his income had been very, very low until my project manager, Hazel, who started her own staffing agency, which is now how we staff everybody that we need. I just contact Hazel and say, look, this is what I need. Here's the job duties. Here's the pay structure, because I pay on a per task basis, pay her and all of her subordinates the same way. And then she says, okay, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And usually in 2 days, she comes back and says, I got a candidate. Here they are. And we get them started. And so anyways, he had, Hazel had actually found this guy and asked him if he, would want to learn how to write using the tools that I provided and all the SOP training that I provided. And he agreed, and he came on. And I got a message about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago now from Hazel, the project manager, who I communicate directly with her, and then she communicates with all the subordinates. And anyway, I got a message from her, and she told me that he had said how much it had changed his life because he's now making 5 times the amount of money working for me and Semantic Links than he was working a full-time job before his disability. So it significantly has changed his family's life. And so that's just one example of many that I have where, paying on a per task basis, it helps your workers to become, first of all, you don't have to worry about throwing money away because you're only paying for productive time of stuff that's been approved, obviously. Number two, the better they get, the more efficient they get, the more money they can make. So it's in their best interest to become more efficient and to be super productive and to find ways to improve the process. I've said this many times, but when I develop an SOP, unless it's something that I'm really super proficient at, if I need something done, I will learn how to do something just enough to be able to develop a very crude SOP or standard operating procedure out of how I figured out how to execute that task. And again, it may not be pretty, it may not be polished, but it's enough to get it. I was able to execute the task successfully, even if it was very inefficient. And I'm able to then create an SOP on how I did it, even if it's, cumbersome or again, an inefficient process. I can still develop an SOP out of it and then delegate that out and say, okay, here's the SOP. It's not very pretty, right? Or it's not the most efficient way, but go through it, learn how to do this task. And then it's on you. It's up to you, the worker, to be able to learn how to improve the process, make it more efficient. Be on the lookout for tools or apps or software that can help to improve the process. If you find something, let me know and I'll review it. And if I feel like it's a good fit, then I'll purchase it for you. And that way you can be more productive. And so again, I will fund the tools and everything that my workers need. But the whole reason why I'm telling you this is because ever since I started paying everybody on a per task basis, everybody's happier. I know exactly what my costs are going to be for everything. So I bill accordingly. So when, like, for example, my link building business, I know exactly what my costs are for each type of link that I build. I know exactly to a T how much everything costs me. So therefore, I know what my profit margins are on every single link that I sell. I know exactly what my margins are, if that makes sense. And so it's a great strategy because, again, my workers, they're all making money hand over fist, like significant money in the Philippines working for me because of the way that I pay them. I'm making money. It's profitable. We're all happy, right? So that's the first thing I can tell you when dealing with outsourcers. I have a couple of VAs that do hourly pay that are hourly that like just generate reports and things like that. And there may even be a time where I even change that over because I might be selling some of the reports on like Vetted, for example. So I might end up switching it to where they get paid per report generated as opposed to per hour to report or generate the reports too. But what I'm saying is it's very rare that I pay anything hourly. Everything is pretty much done on a per task basis. You get much more efficient workers out of that way. You don't have problems to deal with, or at least not nearly as many. And everybody can make more money. And that to me is huge incentive. So that's number one. As far as dealing or communicating with the team, I require, not all the time. So with my team members, especially when they're new, I give them that's another thing, is always have an SOP, always have standard operating procedures, documented procedures for the tasks that you want them to do. Have those prepared before you hire somebody, because trust me, again, from experience, I've hired people in the past and didn't have SOPs ready. And then, like, again, when I was paying salary or paying hourly or whatever, I would have to pay them sometimes when I didn't give them any work because I was the bottleneck, that I didn't give them the training. So my point is, don't hire somebody until you have SOPs so that you can delegate work to them immediately and have them being productive while you are working on developing other SOPs, for example. Okay. But then once, like I said, with a new worker, with a new hire, I assign them the SOPs and I will pay them. Sometimes I will pay hourly training pay while they're learning the process before I pay on a per task basis. So like I might say, okay, here's an SOP. I'm going to pay you 10 hours at $6 an hour or whatever, or maybe 15 hours or 20 hours, depending on how complex the task is, right? If it's something more complex, I might say, okay, I'm going to pay you 20 hours at $6 an hour to learn this process. Go through it twice if you need to. Once you feel comfortable that you understand the concepts, then I will assign a task for you to execute following the SOP. And at which point, then you will be paid on the per task basis, if that makes sense. So I do pay training pay for that. But what I'm saying is, whenever I hire a new worker comes on, I give them the SOP. I tell them what they're going to be paid while they're training for that, during that SOP, like while they're in training, excuse me. And then I also require that they are available for at least an hour Monday through Friday at specific times when it's convenient for me and my business. So for me, it's between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Monday through Friday, where I ask my remote staff, my remote team, to be available so that for those 2 hours every day, so that I can always chat, because we use Slack as our communication channel. That way, if there's any issues that come up with any of the tasks that they're executing, that they're responsible for, they can communicate directly with me via Slack. The 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. is the 2 hours that I have available for that time. Before at 9 a.m. I start taking sales calls and all the other kind of stuff that I do throughout the day. So the point is I require that. If they cannot be available during that window of time, they're not a good fit for my company. That makes sense. And sometimes they have to rearrange their schedules just to be available during that time. That's not my problem. You want the opportunity to come work for me and get paid very, very well, considerably higher than most people with even like, advanced degrees in the Philippines, then you're going to be available during those times. That's just a requirement. But then after they're trained and they become proficient in whatever task it is that they're responsible for executing, then, we can relax that. It's not necessary for them to be available during that specific time. If they have problems that need to be addressed, then I will tell them, okay, just be available tomorrow in that same kind of window, and we will address then resolve these issues at that time, if that makes sense. So it's really important. Next thing I would recommend, and this would be the last part of it, would be as soon as you can promote whoever your best virtual assistant or employee, have a contract worker, however you whatever the arrangement is that you have with them. If you've got somebody that's proven themselves to be ambitious and able to manage themselves well without needing micromanagement. I don't micromanage anybody on my team, and I won't. If they need micromanaging, they're not a good fit. But what I was going to say is, if you already have someone on your team that has proven themselves to be particularly proficient and good and self-supporting and all that kind of stuff, promote them to a project manager as soon as possible, or at least a team leader. There's different different levels of the way that I organize my team, my kind of company or organization is we have, certain teams, and there's usually a team leader that kind of manages or leads the team. But then they report to a project manager. The project manager reports directly to me. So I don't really communicate with my, the staff that's down, like writing content, things like that. I communicate with the project manager. The project manager communicates with the team or the team leader, depending on what the hierarchy is. But the point that I'm trying to make is get yourself out of day-to-day operations, out of the daily management side of things as soon as possible, because that'll eat your time alive. And I don't enjoy that part of it at all. I don't have any problem managing people, but I don't enjoy it. I would rather be working on SEO stuff, like seriously. So again, like the arrangement that I have with my project manager, Hazel, is just fabulous because, and now she has an assistant project manager named Sam, who's also amazing. And so I communicate directly with Hazel, and I communicate directly with Sam, the assistant project manager. And then occasionally I'll talk to the team leader of the site build team. And that's basically it. All the other workers are all managed by the project manager. So it insulates me from having to answer a bunch of questions, right? That's what I pay the project manager well for. And what's really good about that too, is if you're paying on a per task basis, when you're paying you can pay a project manager. So like, for example, with the arrangement that I have with Hazel, my project manager, Semantic Links, I pay her a certain amount for every single link that is built by her subordinates. Does that make sense? So like, in other words, I pay Hazel, the project manager, a set dollar amount per link that is built. Then she pays the workers, her subordinates, who are the ones actually doing the work, she pays them from what I pay her. So let's just use an example. Let's say that I'm paying $20 per link placed to Hazel. She might pay $15 per link placed to the team members. So she's acting as the manager, assigning work, communicating with those workers, and insulating me from having to do all that. And she gets paid for every link that they place. Does that make sense? In other words, so it makes sense as we expand our team, and she puts more, it's like a network marketing model, because the more subordinates, the more workers we place under her, the more her income goes up to manage, because she's like exponentially increasing her pay because, we're adding more and more, people under her, that every time they produce, she gets a cut, if that makes sense. So it's just been a phenomenal way to build an organization, because everybody's making money and everybody's happy. And I've got some fiercely loyal workers. I mean, Hazel's been on my team for 7 years, and I'm just telling you guys, like, she started off as just a virtual assistant. She then became over time, she proved herself and became my executive assistant when it was just me and two VAs. But then when I started Semantic Links at the beginning of this year, we've now got 16 full-time employees. So it's crazy. And she manages all of them, and she's crushing it. You know what I mean? So that the reason I went through all of that is I think that is a fantastic question, by the way. This is growing pains that you're going to kind of experience as running a real agency. This is valuable information, guys. And the reason I tell you that is because I've said this before, but everybody comes to in the SEO, not everybody, but most people coming in the SEO business thinking that they're going to become financially free if they just learn how to rank stuff. And you'll find out very quickly that you can be really good at SEO and be super hungry, right? Be broke as hell. There's a lot of broke SEOs out there because they don't know how to run a business from it, right? Ranking stuff does not make you a profitable business owner. And so if you're going to be doing agency work, there's a lot of moving parts and things like that. And I've just learned through like trial and error over the years what works. And so again, that's like, hopefully I'm sharing that with you guys because it took me years to be able to kind of fumble my way through. I've made a lot of mistakes. Don't pay salaries, period. Don't do it. You know, if you guys like somebody who's an actual paid employee that's on payroll as opposed to like, you know, paying them as like, you know, contract workers and things like that, then that's different. But when you're paying contract workers, pay per task or per hour, but I don't like to do per hour anything because there's no incentive for somebody to become efficient when you pay hourly. If that makes sense. If we were giving prizes away for best question, Cool Human would win today. I love that question. So hopefully that was helpful.